Hello internet, welcome to Xenoseries, the show that's basically 50-50 right on predictions. I'm your host, the Modding Corner, and today I want to talk to you about a little theory I have regarding the ending of Xenoverse 2, as well as the possible ending of its legacy characters like our CACs, Trunks, and Supreme Kai of Time. And while I do believe some of the characters will get very predictable endings, or just straight up nothing, looking at you Bardock, I for one am extremely excited for where they take the character of Klonoa, aka the Supreme Kai of Time. As of the recent Future Saga Chapter 4 trailer, we see her undergo the Ultra Super Villain transformation, which automatically begs the question, how was someone like the Supreme Kai of Time able to get controlled and used by few in order to further his plans? But what if I told you it wasn't actually few controlling her? No, as a matter of fact, I think Supreme Kai of Time chose this.
This time, I won't hold you back! But hopeless, depressing timelines are a little dismal, don't you think?
I'll bear in mind all of what has already been said, but the final decision is still mine. A big happy timeline, huh? I could get behind that.
Now, in order to understand why Supreme Kai of Time would ever willingly side with Few, we need to understand both Few and Supreme Kai of Time's desires and goals. Let's start off with Few. Few was the genetic son of both Mira and Toa, who were the primary antagonists of the base game. He was raised not only to carry out his mother's goal of reviving the Demon Realm, but also to rightfully succeed Deborah as its king. However, if you've ever played a Xenoverse 2 DLC, you know that Few's goals never aligned with any of that, as he always was a scientist first, and he especially didn't care for ruining other timelines for his own benefit. No. He either creates rifts to generate energy, which doesn't really affect the Book of Beginning and End, or he just twists outcomes for curiosity's sake, but is quick to revert those changes if things get out of hand. Or even when there's a common enemy, like when his uncle Deborah returned, he was more than willing to aid the Time Patrol to stop his uncle from abusing the timeline for his own benefit. He also has a pretty close relationship with our player character, aka the CAC, as he considers them the one true friend he has. Granted, it's kind of a Batman-Catwoman relationship considering he's friends with basically a time cop, but he is typically more than comfortable with telling the CAC about all of his new ideas and inventions, even showing up to the Timeless directly undetected just to mess with the CAC. However, all of this changes at the start of the Future Saga, as his next creation is a time ring, which allows him to go into the future and see past the age of 852, assuming that's still the current year of Xenoverse 2 story. However, what he sees completely changes him. Suddenly, the always exciting, overly cheerful Few slowly becomes more jaded and even evil in his message, doing things like sending out Pride Troopers to attack innocent people, working alongside Frieza and helping him become a time god, and for the first time ever in Xenoverse 2 history, slave labor. Joking aside, it's actually genuinely kind of sad to see Few go down this negative character arc, but despite all of that, one thing hasn't changed. Few still cares for us. Us as in the player, I mean. You can argue he only really sent out the Pride Troopers just to get the attention of the gods and our CAC. Throughout the whole time he was working with Frieza, directly attacking the Time Patrol in Kanton City was something he was actively trying to avoid for the longest, only resorting to it so he can use Frieza to further power up the Ultra Super Villain crystals. We even see him protecting Trunks in the CAC in Chapter 3 by opening a portal before Frieza could kill us. And at the end of Chapter 3, he worries what the future will look like, and I quote, "Without a hero like you. Thank you." Now, at the time I'm writing this, we still do not know what the future Few saw was, but for him to get out of character enough like this to do things that the Few in the previous DLCs would never do, like destroying Kanton City, means the future he saw had to have been his absolute worst case scenario. And knowing what I know now, I think I know what he saw. Our character is going to die. Somehow, in the very near future. Our CAC, the same character we spent many months, years, hell, even a decade with, will die. And this worries him. This is why he constantly goes out of his way to get enough power to do all of these evil things, but still constantly protects us. Even when we stop his plans, he keeps finding new ways to prevent this outcome. Now you're probably thinking, Eric, you fully lost the plot. How does this remotely relate to the Supreme Kai of Time? Well, I think it's about time we talk about her side of the story. Klonoa, despite never using that name in game, is the Supreme Kai of Time. She has been the Supreme Kai of Time for at least 75 million years. She is the guardian of the Time Nest, which stores scrolls from the Book of the Beginning and End. She also guards the legendary Toki Toki, whose eggs have the power of creating brand new universes upon hatching. Due to this, she has truly seen everything history has to offer. The good, the bad, the ugly. So by the time of the Xenoverse series, I think we see a far more lenient Supreme Kai of Time. In age 850, Supreme Kai of Time alongside Trunks form what we now know as the Time Patrol, an elite group of powerful fighters who protect the universe from unstable rifts, time discrepancies, and threats. Even within that, she only trusts a select few with helping stop events that affect the Book of Beginning and End. That being Trunks, our Xenoverse 1 CAC, our Xenoverse 2 CAC, and whatever time variant bum Goku she finds on the street that day.
Where your clothes at?
Now, where I say she's grown lenient is with Goku and Trunks. Now, I think it's pretty easy to forget that the Time Patrol protects all time, so why do we only focus on timelines where the Z Fighters are active? That 50-year stretch where tons of important events and battles happen. The big reason for this, I believe, is because of Trunks. Now, the reason Trunks became a Time Patroller in the first place is to pay off his massive debt to Supreme Kai of Time. That debt being what he did in Z, creating the original three-way time split. The future where Trunks comes from, the future we see in the series, and the future Cell comes from. Instead of just putting the scrolls together and fixing this change and stopping Bulma from ever creating the time machine in the first place, she decides to basically take Trunks hostage and create the Time Patrol, which leads to all of these people being able to freely disrupt history. This leads into us getting involved with the Time Patrol and stopping Demigra, Mira, and Toa from taking over all of time. But what's the reason in doing all of this if it's her job to protect history? Why would you let this one world-shattering change slide that leads to so many significant domino effects for all of time moving forward? I think it's because Klonoa's lonely. No, but seriously, as far as we know, the only companionship she's ever had with anyone is Toki Toki and maybe Demigra before he went crazy. She's aware of the other gods, but with the exception of Elder Kai, she's never gone out of her way to interact with them, and honestly, they would never need to interact with her so long as she's doing her job. As we know, Kais typically do not involve themselves with mortals unless provoked. So maybe she let Trunks' mistake slide despite him breaking this unbreakable rule, because maybe she was just done with it all. Again, we know she is at least 75 million years old. Could you imagine how many, quote, bad futures she must have snuffed out by now? I think seeing Trunks' desperation and struggle made her decide this one mistake can slide because, well, look at all the good it bought. If we're going strictly off the Super era, I feel like Zeno would have just gotten around to flat out destroying the universe sooner or later. But thanks to Goku, they stood a chance. A chance that would have never came if not for Trunks' decision. And again, it's not like he got away with it, that's why he's in her service, but perhaps that's why she let it slide. From that mistake was the domino effect. First Trunks, then the Time Patrol, then building a whole community at the edge of time in Toki Toki and Kanton City. Over these years that likely just feel like moments to her, she's grown herself a small community, no, a family that she feels bound to protect. A very overlooked detail in Klonoa's story was actually in her free DLC, where she organizes a tournament to not only find out who the strongest person in Kanton City is, but also to train. As after Infinite History, she doesn't want to be put in a helpless position if the city gets attacked again. We have to remember, if it wasn't for our mentor in CAC, Few and Deborah would have just won here. Which is why in future Saga Chapter 3, when Frieza obtains the power of a Supreme Kai of Time, she is more than ready to fight alongside you and counter whatever Frieza's been doing. She finally returns the favor for us because she knows if she wasn't there, then let's be honest, our CAC would have been hanging out with Diavolo by now. Shout out GER. Another thing we need to look at is her dynamic with Few, as it is very different than the relationship she had with Toa and Mira. You see, I don't think the Supreme Kai of Time ever saw Few as a real threat. Sure, he is a very dangerous individual who can twist history on the occasion, but in her heart, she knows that he's just a confused kid. As a matter of fact, I think she might be kind of jealous of Few, as he uses his control over time to find better outcomes, doing things like reuniting future Gohan and Goku, aiding Bardock in his final push against Frieza, bringing back the Good 21 and Android 16 for the superhero arc. These are all things that definitely disrupt history, but it makes the people involved happy, and I think Cronoa is sick of feeling like the bad guy in these scenarios. And I think that's something that's been building up ever since this incident. In the base game of Xenoverse 2, Future Trunks briefly reunites with his mentor Gohan. However, he not so subtly slips that Future Gohan will die if he decides to fight the androids. This just flat out breaks the rules of the Time Patrol, and Trunks gets called back immediately. And when he doesn't listen, we have to try and calm him down. Luckily this works, and while it was awkward at first, Trunks eventually got over it and everything went back to normal. At least, that's what the game wants you to believe. If you finish collecting the Distorted Time Eggs, you get access to 2 special quests. One where you play as Bardock when he was stuck in the Time Rift, and another one where you play as Future Gohan during his final battle. However, there is one major difference.
Trunks, you came from the future, didn't you? So Bulma was able to finish her time machine. I'm really proud of you, Trunks.
And this time, Gohan. Gohan, I'll go with you to fight.
This changes everything, as together Gohan and Trunks defeat 17 and 18, and Trunks decides to stay in this changed future knowing he could never return to the Time Patrol again. Now, in the aftermath of us seeing this, Supreme Kai of Time gives us a choice: undo this possible future, or let it slide and let Trunks be happy. Now, regardless of what you choose here, Supreme Kai of Time heavily emphasizes that the final decision is hers, and based off everything we've seen afterwards, I think she may have made the hard choice. Not necessarily the wrong choice, but the hard one. Which is why I think she's incredibly jealous of Fu, because despite what it would change, Fu would have allowed a timeline like that to exist. The biggest evidence of this for me is this line of dialogue at the end of the Dragon Ball Superhero adaptation. To me, this shows that she never disagreed with his intentions, only his message, but I do think that one more quote-unquote Trunks incident might be the thing that causes her to flip. Which brings me to my future Saga Chapter 4 theory. How does Fu recruit the Supreme Kai of Time? Let me set the mood. Not long after the reconstruction of Kanton City, the search is still on for Fu's whereabouts, the likes of which have been pretty unknown since the end of Future Saga Chapter 3. This causes our CAC and Trunks to search tirelessly for him. While they are on the search, Fu makes his presence known to the Supreme Kai of Time in the Time Nest, not coming to fight her, no, but to warn her of the future. She is extremely hesitant to listen to him at first, but he shows her the homemade time ring he's made. She is pissed that he would even create something like this and tries to destroy it. However, in doing this, she sees the future that the ring foretold. In this future, she sees the death of our patroller and the incoming annihilation of the Time Patrol. Fu tells her that this is exactly what he's been trying so hard to prevent. He's tried doing things on his own, but the only way he can prevent this outcome now is to warn Supreme Kai of Time herself. She is completely taken aback by this, at first going as far as to deny what she saw, but Fu gives her a choice. Either keep the natural flow of history going and have that lead to the destruction of the Time Patrol, or aid Fu in one last Hail Mary in order to prevent it. And based off everything we've seen Supreme Kai of Time do and say, and instruct us to do involving protecting the flow of history, do you think she would sacrifice her new friends, her family, her home, in order to protect the flow of history? Honestly, I don't think she would want to do that again. Assuming that she did stop Trunks from keeping the future Gohan alive and seeing him and the CAC grow into these powerful protectors that she nourished, I don't think she'd want to let go of that. This will be the straw that breaks the camel's back, so to speak. She begrudgingly agrees to go to the end with Fu in order to prevent what's coming. As for why she's doped up on USV, well, I think it'll be an easy misconception that Fu kidnapped her, which causes Trunks and the CAC to go find the strongest heroes around to finally beat Fu. But since he has the Supreme Kai of Time on his side, he gives her USV in order to further enhance her abilities, which allows her to create their own small army to hold off the Time Patrol. Which means I see this story ending in either one of two ways. Either the end of the world happens, resetting the Dragon Ball timeline to make way for Xenoverse 3, or Fu and Cronoa actually find a way to save the Xenoverse once and for all. Will they find out how to prevent the death of the CAC? Will Trunks finally get something cool after 11 years? Will my Ultra Superhero theory be fully correct? Find out on the next episode of Dragon Ball Xenoverse!